And of course, if you have more information, want to find out a little bit more history, feel free to talk to us as well. But of course, now we get to the part of trying the awamori. So today you'll be experiencing the liquor that used to be drunk by the royals of Japan. So what's interesting about today's experience is that I think some of you might have tried awamori kind of on by itself. Today, what we want to do is really show you the versatility of awamori and how it pairs differently with some of our own Singaporean cuisine. So I'll hand you into the expert guidance of Thomas Ling. So he's our awamori expert today. He's been appointed as his former role is awamori gymna by the Okinawa Prefecture Awamori Distillers Association. So I leave you in his expert hands to guide us through today's drinking and food pairing experience.
Thank you. So very good afternoon, everyone. And as they say in the Ryukyu Kingdom language or the Awamori dialect, Haisai Mensori, hello, welcome. All right, and as mentioned earlier, thank you once again for taking your time joining us in exploring the world of Awamori. So as people are starting to travel again, especially with the Lunar New Year, I was coming from the airport just now, traffic was crazy. So this afternoon, this Thursday, Tuesday, we'd like to transport you to the amazing, beautiful islands of Okinawa through the exquisite awamori that we are going to taste. And I shall be your tour guide, your facilitator in guiding and sharing the idiosyncrasies, the interesting aspects and facets of this interesting spirit from Japan. This travel session, traveling without moving through the interesting little cups that we'll be tasting awamori with, will take around 80 minutes. The first session will be about 20 minutes, delving into the fundamentals, the background, the basics of what this mysterious, arguably oldest spirit of Japan or Asia is all about. And the next 60 minutes towards the second part of the session, we'll be having more interaction, more fun. We'll be delving into pairing the Japanese awamori with local Singaporean, Southeast Asian based cuisine. And most importantly, throughout this session, we'll love to gather all your thoughts. If at any time of the presentation you might have any questions or curiosities, I'm sure most of us here would have different experiences and entry points with regards to personal experiences with awamori, and especially taking on the short video that we have viewed together. So do write down or do feel free to share any curiosities or queries that you might have. All right, so let's begin on the first part of the session. All right, so perhaps we can start the session rolling by receiving perhaps a few questions from all of you ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I'm sure some of you are familiar with awamori, we have tasted some of the brands, or perhaps some of you are new or haven't tasted this interesting spirit at all. So perhaps one or two questions from the floor with regards to awamori. Yes.
I understand that all those features here are
Yes.
for export. So just curious, how are they different from the domestic?
Okay, all right. So the bottles here, in terms of for export, all right. So I could have a chat with the team, where I believe the products are already here, and these are also unique interpretations of awamori. One which is bottled by the Awamori Okinawa Distillers Operating Association, which is a blend of 47 distilleries in awamori, and of course one is specific from one of the leading pioneer distilleries in awamori. Excellent. One more question perhaps to anyone? All right, if no, then we'll just start the segment rolling with what is awamori all about? Is it sake? Is it soju? Is it akin to a bottle of rum, to mezcal, tequila, or whiskey? So what's awamori all about? So when we think of Japan, it's very common to think of Nihonshu or sake. It's really trending now, Japanese sake. For the past 3 to 4 years, exports into Southeast Asia has grown. It has been skyrocketing year on year despite the challenges of the pandemic. Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam have been experiencing year-on-year growth of above 100% for Japanese sake. So Japanese sake is well established, all right, at least in this part of the world, and globally being a major representative of Japanese quality alcoholic beverage. Then of course, on the second wave is soju. Many of you might think, oh, soju, isn't that Korean land? K-pop, 안녕하세요, isn't soju from Korea, all right? But if you delve deeper, actually the origins of soju are from the southern prefectures, the southern islands of Japan, not too far away from Okinawa, from Kyushu, from Kagoshima, from Oita, all right, from Miyazaki. That's where the trade routes, all right, the know-how of distillation, all right, since the stills were invented, all right, from Mesopotamia, from the Middle East, they traveled through India, and from India they went to the Ayutthaya kingdom then, and they entered to Japan and the Korean peninsula through the southern islands of Okinawa and the Kyushu Islands. So if you do a bit of research, the origins of soju are also from the southern prefectures of Japan. And today's focus, Awamori, is, I mean, in general, in broad strokes, is also a type of soju, but it's a soju specifically distilled and made in the islands of Okinawa. So this is protected by the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and it's also a geographical indication recognized by trademark bodies international in the world, and of course by the geographical indication as ratified by the National Tax Agency of Japan. So Awamori is essentially soju that is distilled specifically within the islands of Awamori. All right, so you might say, oh, so what's so special besides it being geographically limited or indicated? So number one, what makes this difference is its ingredients. All right, so there are 4 key ingredients in Japanese Awamori, which shares parallels with quality Japanese soju. Number one, it is made from rice, just like sake, soju. But Japanese soju has versatility or variety being made from sweet potato, imo, or barley, mugi, kokuto from brown sugar, etc. Whatever raw produce or plants that are in abundance in that specific town, village, or area that has a high level of starch that could be fermented and distilled but be used as a base ingredient. So in the islands of Okinawa, I mean, they have of course an abundance of sweet potatoes, other produce like lime, shekwasha, which will be showcased in refreshing cocktails towards the end of the session. But for Japanese Awamori, it is made using rice. And the rice that they employ to make this Awamori is not the local rice because of the land, the soil. There isn't enough rice to be cultivated within Okinawa to meet the production needs of Awamori. So the rice that they mainly use is from Thailand, what we call the long grain indica rice or the jasmine rice, akin to basmati rice. So in contrast to Japanese sake, for Japanese sake they use the japonica rice, the short grain rice. All right, so number one, the raw ingredient that they use is rice, and it is unique. So you might ask, well, Thomas, why do they use rice from Thailand? All right, once again, this is in reference and in testament to the trade routes of Awamori, right, being a trade outpost due to its strategic location and it being an independent kingdom till 1872. Right, so if you visit Naha, Awamori, I mean in Okinawa today, you can see a lot of remnants of how the glorious years of the trading years of the islands or the kingdom, the Ryukyu kingdom of Awamori. So they did a lot of trade with the Ayutthaya kingdom of Thailand, and that was also where they absorbed the know-how of distillation. So until today, most of the rice that's being used for making Japanese Awamori is the long grain Thai rice. But of late, there's a trend again of local farmers planting rice and using local rice to make Awamori. Right? So this is to, especially for the smaller producers, to really champion a purely 100% made in Japan product, right? Because some of the critics will say, hey, this isn't purely 100% Japanese because there's Thai rice being used, right? But that's once again testament to the history and to the lineage and to the trade friendship between the Ryukyu kingdom and the Ayutthaya kingdom. So still very much all right, protecting and referring to how the identity and history of Okinawa is. But today, as mentioned, there are small distilleries planting local rice and using also Japanese rice for making awamori. But that's only a handful and very minuscule because the production cost of Japanese rice is considerably higher than Thai rice, which is in abundance. Number two is this unique ingredient called koji or koji kin, or what we call in Mandarin meijin. Right, so it's a type of mold that's predominantly used in Japan and also in China, throughout Southeast Asia and Asia, in what we call saccharification process, in converting non-fermentable starch into sugar. So our friends in Japan, they use koji not only for making awamori, soju or sake, but they also employ the magical powers of koji to make soy sauce, mirin, etc. Right? So in the realm of koji, this interesting beneficial mold, when we talk about mold or fungus, usually something negative or unhealthy comes to mind, but in the production of alcoholic beverages, it plays an integral role in crafting and giving the product its unique characteristics, flavor, and identity. So in the world of Japanese koji, meijin, there exist three types of koji, differentiated by the color. What we call the yellow koji, which is the most popular one, widely used by Japanese sake brewers to make sake. Number two, what we call yellow koji, used predominantly by soju distilleries in the southern prefectures of Kyushu for distilling Japanese soju. And of course, today's focus, koji number three, the black koji, kuro koji, right? Found and used predominantly and specifically only for the distillation and the fermenting base of Japanese awamori. So one of the things that koji produce, besides, doing its main role of converting non-fermentable starch into sugar, so one of the byproducts that it secretes is high levels of citric acid. So citric acid acts as a bouncer, all right? It creates a barrier for non-desirable microorganisms that are floating in the air, bacteria and all other undesirable fungus that exist in the warmer temperature of Okinawa, all right? So today's temperature in Okinawa, by the way, is about 24 to 26 degrees Celsius, not too far away from this afternoon's weather in Duxton Hill, right? And of course, humid weather once again invites a lot of undesirable microorganisms. So this high level of citric acid that's been secreted by the black koji during the saccharification process actually protects the base mash of the production process, right? To once again protect and to retain the complex, all right, wild, gamey, rustic aromatics and flavors of awamori that we'll be tasting shortly. And kuro koji, or black koji, also works very aggressively, right? It works even in high temperatures, and it draws and pulls out all the, complexities of the raw ingredient, being the rice, right, long Thai grain rice, and of course the yeast and the naturally harder water, the higher what we call total dissolved solids, TDS. So waters in Okinawa are also slightly different from waters in central Japan, in Hokkaido. Right? So as we go further up north, in certain parts of what we call in the northern prefectures in Akita, all right, or in Iwate, waters are generally softer. But throughout Japan, waters are generally soft, all right, low in minerality, in what we call iron and manganese. These are non-desirable elements that would give the finished fermented or distilled product a bitter age. Right? So generally down south in the islands of Okinawa, where it's sunny, cheerful, relaxed, it's dubbed the Hawaii of Japan. So the minerality of the waters there are slightly higher. Right? So once again, that gives also the age, all right, the rusticity to the texture and the mouthfeel of the awamori that we'll be tasting shortly. Right? So water, koji, all right, rice, all right, and of course, most importantly, is the influence of man, right? In terms of culture, how they put on, all right, an identity to the products that are being crafted. So as we all know, Okinawa being a south, so they're always looking for something strong, rich, hearty to pair with the complex umami-laden cuisine down south in Okinawa. Right, so there are a few Okinawa restaurants here also in Singapore. There's one that I enjoy called Nirai Kanai, if I'm not mistaken, in Great World. So they've been around for a while, so they have very rich, flavorful. They're famous for their bitter gourd melon, their Goya champuru. They're famous for, in Okinawa, they're famous also for their pork, alright, so they also practice nose to tail eating. So one of my favorite chewy side dishes is the mimiga, which is boiled pig's ears, alright, that are cut thinly, alright, and it's really crunchy and goes really well with a glass or two of refreshing awamori. Alright, so that being said, moving on to current times. So in the past, I still remember the first time I had my experience tasting a glass of awamori. So it was like an attack on my palate, right? So it gives me parallels of my first tasting, perhaps with a very rich and flavorful Chinese baijiu, perhaps. Right? So a lot of umami-laden, rustic, harsh, strong, complex characters that hit you. Right? But nowadays, as awamori is evolving, so there are a lot of distilleries that are also making different expressions of awamori, right, especially for the export market. So as mentioned earlier, Japanese sake Nihonshu has already established itself internationally as a quality alcoholic beverage from Japan, which are crossing borders, being paired with not only Japanese cuisine but also European, French, Italian, Spanish, and also Southeast Asian cuisine, right? Peranakan, strange Chinese, Indian, Malay, etc. Then of course the wave of Japanese soju, which has been very popular, gaining a lot of traction for the past many years. A lot of initiatives done by the prefectural governments with bartenders around the world in the region. And last but not least, the third wave, what we call this interesting spirit from Okinawa, this mysterious spirit that's not heard of much, or at least for now, and how it is also being explored upon, as mentioned earlier, some of the distillers experimenting by using local rice, and as also shared, there are 47 distilleries in existence today in the Okinawa prefecture, and some of them are also experimenting in making distilling more fruit-forward, elegant, lower alcohol by volume awamoris, right? Just to draw parallels with Chinese baijiu. Perhaps in the beginning was all a certain brand like Mao Tai, or which is Nongxiang. Then now you have Qingxiang, Huaxiang, Mixiang, right? More floral, fruity, lower ABV expression. So in the realm of Japanese awamori, such lower ABV, more fruit-forward, aromatic awamori expressions are also being made to attract different palate preferences out there. All right, so in the distillation of awamori, there's also what we call an atmospheric distillation, and of course a reduced pressure distillation, right? Especially for friends or the media who are a bit more curious on the technical aspects of Japanese awamori. So traditionally, the atmospheric distillation will be the traditional way, using higher temperature of distillation from 85 degrees to 95 degrees Celsius. So this really draws out all the umami, all the intrinsic flavor of the raw ingredients, resulting in a rich, complex, generally higher alcohol by volume product. All right, so generally the alcohol volume by volume for awamori ranges between 30% up to 43%. But of course, there's also this interesting awamori, right, which is from the Yonaguni Islands, which goes up to 60%, called hanazake, right? So traditionally, this was distilled for specific religious rituals or celebrations, but now it's also being sought after by eclectic bartenders, all right, to showcase interesting artisanal spirits that are hard to find for the informed connoisseur or taster. Then, of course, in contrast, is what we call the reduced pressure distillation method, which is the difference is being distilled at a lower temperature between 45 to 55 degrees Celsius. So hence, the distillation process only draws the more aromatic compounds, right? The lighter, more pleasant aromatic compounds of the distillate. So hence, resulting in a lower alcohol by volume product, and of course, less robust but more delicate floral, fruity aromas that could show in the product altogether, right? So in terms of distillation, all awamori in Japan are made using the pot still, right? So as we all know, in the world of spirits, the larger quantity mass-produced spirits are usually being distilled in a continuous still for better clarity, purity, higher alcohol by volume, larger production numbers, and of course more artisanal alcoholic distillates, right? Single malt whiskey, pot still vodka, rum are usually done in a traditional pot still, right, which is batch process, and it takes much more time. And Japanese awamori is also distilled only once, in contrast to whiskey, which might be distilled twice, 2.5, 2.75, 3 times, right, or other spirits that are distilled many, many times. So awamori is only distilled once again, to showcase and to preserve, and of course to protect and to retain the complexity and the identity of the unique natural raw ingredients that they are employing. All right, all good so far? Any questions? Yes.
The trend of using more of the reduced pressure.
Yes.
Is that the trend towards
Yes, I think so. Yeah, good question. Question with regards to the different techniques of distillation, what we call the reduced pressure and the atmospheric. Yes, they're for certain distilleries, and especially following the trends of the international export market and consumers, especially the younger consumer segment where they are drinking lower ABV drinks, right? Low ABV drinks or zero ABV in general. So there is a trend towards what we call reduced pressure distillation practices to showcase the lighter, the fruitier, the softer, the gentler side of awamori. Any further questions? So if any questions come to your mind, do share as we go along. All right, so let's move on now to the second segment, which is the tasting. All right, so we will gradually move on. So in front of you are 4 tasting samples for our tasting assessment and adventure today. So let's refer to the tasting notes that have been prepared by the team. So as in discovering a new beverage of interest, is always good to have a reference point, right? Just like when we are visiting a new place, a new village, a new town, a new prefecture, it's good to know where are the interesting places to see, what are the interesting local snacks and food to try, the people to meet, etc. Right? So we have prepared a pictorial wheel. So this is actually the official Awamori flavor wheel that's been prepared, that's been put together by the Awamori Distillers Association. So we can see the whole spectrum of aromas, right, ranging from top right in green, from grassy, nutty, spicy, to cereals, mushrooms, and as we move further down the wheel, more sour fruit, yogurt, pickled radish, aromatics come forward. Then of course as we move through the third quarter and the end of the wheel, aromas and flavors and sensations that we get from aged awamori. And last but not least, on top, in terms of the flavors that we can get from the other raw ingredients in terms of water, in terms of minerality, bitterness, oiliness, etc. But it's interesting to see, there are 3 specific terms that are being highlighted in asterisk towards the bottom left of the wheel, where the red color is. You can see goatee, ripe physalis, and white plums. All right, so as mentioned, awamori, in Okinawa until 1872, they were an independent kingdom, all right, the Ryukyu kingdom, and they were ruled by barons, all right. And one of the barons that took effort, all right, into really detailing and writing down the characteristics of Awamori stated these three main flavors, aromas that gives Awamori its unique distinction in contrast to Japanese soju or Japanese sake. So number one, the smell of a male goat. Anybody smell or went to a farm and smell a male goat before, right? So there's an interesting aroma descriptor based on the annals and the records of Awamori history. All right, and one of the interesting bar dishes, if you happen to go into the city of Naha, there's this interesting Awamori bar called Awamori Shoko. It's a members only bar, but certain days they allow friends and visitors to go in. So one of the interesting side dishes that I tried was a sashimi of aged raw goat served with shredded ginger. All right, so that was really interesting, all right, for me, and the flavor was amazing, and it paired well really with the aged awamoris I had that time. And the second flavor that identifies or gives awamori its distinct identity is what we call ripe physalis. Or physalis is known as gooseberries, all right, to a certain extent. Right, you can find them in supermarkets from time to time, depending on season, and sometimes for wine lovers in the room, all right, a typical aromatic that you'll find in a glass of refreshing Sauvignon Blanc, especially from Marlborough, New Zealand. That's gooseberry, physalis aromas that sometimes you'll find in unaged awamori. And last but not least, white plums or dried plums. So these would be the three key, interesting, historical identity of awamori aromatics that's been recorded down. But of course, once again, we'd like to gather your thoughts and have your insights on the awamori that we're tasting today. All right, so let's move on to the tasting proper. So we have 4 awamori for your tasting pleasure today from 2 distilleries. The first one is from this distillery called Higashuzo. The name of the distillery is called Higashuzo, and the brand is called Zampa. So this is about a little under an hour car's ride north of Naha city. So this distillery is really unique. So it's been around since the late 1800s, but it started commercial operations actively after the end of World War II. So it's really rising from the ashes of war. And the founder of this distillery, all right, he left his job as a teacher, all right, to help and to make quality awamori. Because after the war, at the time, a lot of things generally were in ruin, all right. People still needed to have a heavy drink, all right, to get through the challenges of the day, of the times. And since a lot of the distilleries were being destroyed, so there were people still making awamori, but not in a proper, conducive manner. So there were a lot of spirits or distillates that were not really made properly, cleanly. So a lot of ethanol, or so a lot of people got blind or got poisoning. So this teacher stepped in and said, hey, I want to really make sure that I make a good quality awamori that could be consumed by the local Okinawa people at that time. Right. So Zanpa is also the name of that beautiful cape. If you head to the distillery today, so it overlooks the sea, all right, and there's a cape. And of course, Zampa generally, illustratively refers to the waves crashing on the cape and the waters that splashes on the cliffs, right? It dries on the cliffs. So that's the interesting meaning of Zampa. And today they are one of the larger recognizable awamori brands from Okinawa. So they have a wide variety of expressions, all right, from the non-aged awamori, which is usually kept and stored for at least 6 months prior to release, and all the awamoris that we are tasting today are what we belong to the category what we call aged awamori. So to be called an aged awamori, the distillate has to be stored for at least 3 years and above. And this is aged 12 years. So it might be a blend of different distillate, but the youngest one in this bottle has to be at least 12 years. And one of the interesting aspects of awamori, as mentioned by Ikehara-san, and of course some of the organizers earlier, is one of the few spirits that after it's being bottled, it continues to develop and age and put on more nuances. Other spirits, whiskey, brandy, vodka, rum, mezcal. As we all know, any distillate that's been bottled, it will not age anymore, right? Wine, beer, it ages even though after it's been bottled. So it's also one of the interesting aspects of Japanese Awamori due to its interesting ingredients, especially the unique black koji that we were discovering about. So this is the Zampa 12, and we also have the Zampa 24 years for us to taste side by side. So both and all the Awamori that we are featuring for your tasting pleasure today are all kusu or aged Awamoris. So do feel free to begin tasting side by side the Zampa 12 and the Zampa 24 years.